So I want to bring on an amazing person, Dennison. Dennison and I have known each other for almost 5 years now. Dennison works at Tally. Tally is a platform that I'm sure most of you have seen and used by now if you're part of any DAO community. Today, Dennison is going to be announcing a really amazing feature they've been working on for the past few months. So I won't ruin the surprise. I'll let Dennison actually show you what they're building. And without further ado, please welcome Dennison on stage.
Hello. Hello. Is this one on? Yeah. Great. Excellent. Thank you so much, Karthik, for having me today. So as Karthik mentioned, my name is Dennison Bertram. I am the co-founder and CEO of Tally. Tally is a tool that's really focused on-chain governance, decentralization, allowing teams, projects, protocols, things to actually build credibly neutral decentralization for it on-chain. And today, we are actually launching a new feature, a new product, a new service for that, which is on-chain swaps, right? And on-chain swaps are powered on Tally by CowSwap. And what we're going to do is today, I'm going to talk a little bit about this product and feature, and then give a little bit of a demo, and then we'll probably talk a little bit more about DAOs and decentralization. So a little background on Tally itself. What do? We power L2s and protocols, right? So these are folks like Arbitrum, Uniswap, Aave, ENS, and many more. We allow users to actually discover and manage large communities. The DAOs on Tally have hundreds of thousands of participants. They have tens of thousands of votes on proposals. And using Tally, you can actually look into understanding who are these people, what are they doing, how are they participating. We also help you manage and diversify DAO treasuries. That's a little bit of the focus of this presentation today, with tools around on-chain MEV-protected swaps. That's what we'll be talking about. But there are other things that you can do on Tally today around treasury management. You can use Tally to propose paying people out. Many DAOs on Tally use Tally to actually pay out their team members. You can use it to transfer funds. You can use it to do many of these different things. And because a lot of this on-chain is actually very difficult to do, there's a lot of steps, there's a lot of risk, we actually have no-code proposal creation with drafts and simulations. So this allows you to create a proposal saying, hey, I want to do X, Y, and Z. You can actually simulate and say, aha, this is actually going to work. And then you can share it to someone and say, hey, could you look over this? Does this look good? And if they like it, you can then put it on chain, right? This is important because on-chain DAOs are very different than off-chain DAOs, where everything is happening in smart contracts, and they can be very unforgiving, but that's both a good and bad thing because many of the DAOs on Tally manage quite a lot of power and assets. Today, the DAOs on Tally manage over $10 billion in assets through the interface, but they also do wild things like they control things like sequencers, they control things like bridges, they control things like entire rollups. So it is both a very high risk thing, it can be very scary, but it's also very technical. So no-code tools for proposal creation are very important for helping the general wider community actually create change and create things that happen inside their DAOs. So why build on-chain swaps for DAOs, right? This is a problem that might not be entirely obvious, but DAOs in general have very large but concentrated treasuries, right? You know, there's a meme that happens every now and then around treasury management, especially when prices are going down and DAOs are like, do we have runway? Do we have enough money to fund different things? How are we allocating our funds, et cetera, et cetera. So if you look at some of the largest DAOs out there, Arbitrum, they have $3.7 billion of ARB token, but they also have $6 million in ETH. And not only do they have $6 million in ETH, but they actually earn revenue in ETH, right? The sequencer for Arbitrum actually collects Ethereum as fees, and that goes directly to the DAO, right? Arbitrum is an entirely decentralized L2, right? The people that hold, or the addresses that hold voting power in Arbitrum actually control the entire technology stack, including what to do with their revenue. Nouns DAO has 26 million in staked ETH and 24 million of regular ETH. Nouns DAO also has revenue. They sell NFTs, they sell membership in ETH. Uniswap has 1.5 billion of Uni, but not much else. right? But there's a proposal that's being discussed. People start to talk about the fee switch. Uniswap conceivably could make money, and the DAO is responsible for deciding when and how they make money. And when they get to that, they're going to have to also decide how to spend it or allocate it. Right? And then, of course, ENS. ENS has 78 million of ENS. They have 27 million of ETH and 15 million of USDC. And actually, this 15 million of USDC came about as a proposal that was done earlier in the year. It was very contentious around treasury management for ENS. And that was actually a proposal that helped us see that this tool that we're announcing today is actually very important, right? Because ENS also makes revenue, right? They sell domain names and, ENS names, I should say. And those ENS names, they sell for ETH. And so they also have revenue. So what do they do with it? Well, the second part of this is DAOs have a hard time swapping tokens, right? This might seem unusual because, for most of us, we go to Uniswap to swap our tokens, or, maybe we use MetaMask swaps. We simply plug in how much of a token we're going to swap for another token. We press a button and it's done. Of course, now we well know that there's a dark forest out there, and we have things like MEV bots who are watching our orders and sandwiching them and extracting value out of our orders. And this problem actually only gets worse for DAOs, right? And DAOs are perfect target for MEV bots for a couple reasons, right? Proposals are public, right? By the nature of it, if I have a DAO and I say I would like to swap $50 million of one token for $50 million worth of another token, everybody in the room knows about it. And they know about it sometimes for weeks in advance, right? So if you are an MEV person, you could build a strategy specifically around sandwiching that one proposal. And the problem actually gets even worse because the execution of proposals is permissionless. Once a proposal is passed and it becomes ready for execution, anyone can execute it. Any smart contract can execute it. So if you're an MEV bot, you could actually build an entire flow specifically to sandwich this proposal, where you could run a smart contract that's going to screw this DAO and call execute and screw them again at the other side, right? So this is a very difficult thing for DAOs to do, right? Other problems that they have is to avoid this, they have centralized trusted intermediaries. If you look at a lot of treasury diversification programs, a lot of the debate goes around, okay, what we got to do is we have to find someone, we got to give them millions of dollars, and then they're going to go to Coinbase or Binance, and then ideally they're going to put it through there, and they're going to do it drip by drip and try and get the best rate, and we're going to pay them some sort of fee for doing it, right? And we have to trust this third party. But there's a catch here, right? Not only is there trust required, and there's a lot of legal work that's also required, but there's a loss of transparency here. Once these funds leave control of the DAO and they go into this person or entity that's going to do the management, and this is a really well-paid job because it's a lot of risk in it. It's very complicated. It's very important, right? The DAO no longer has transparency on it. They don't see where the market order price was filled. They don't understand what exchanges the money is at. They don't get to see the KYC documents of the person holding the money. And if something goes wrong, it's very unclear how you, Joe or Jane token holder, is going to do about it, right? So these are big problems for DAOs, especially when we talk about transacting millions of dollars worth of orders, right? So CowSwap has built a really incredible platform stack which allows you to create MEV-protected orders because they have their own network of solvers which compete with one another on signed orders to provide the best price. And because the way it's built, there isn't the ability to sandwich it, right? These are MEV-protected orders, right? But there's another problem. Creating these orders on chain via a smart contract is really difficult. It's hard to do. And it's also very scary to do, right? Because you're creating this packed byte code with all this information that goes in. And if you mess it up, you can get royally screwed, to be frank, right? But it also makes it very difficult for people to create, not just because it's difficult to create, but because there's a social element of trust that goes into creating it. You don't want to be the person who creates the smart contract order by hand manually that loses money for your DAO, right? So what happens is there's a lot of people with great ideas out there for treasury management there's a lot of people out there with great ideas on swapping tokens for something, but everyone is a little bit afraid to be the person who actually does it, right? Because sometimes these communities, especially, can be very unforgiving of mistakes, right? So creating orders directly on MEV-protected protocols is very hard. So enter Tally on-chain swaps, right? So what we've built here is on-chain execution and MEV protection as a recipe on Tally. We've worked with CowSwap. There's a special smart contract that's built called Milkman. The CowSwap protocol is very into the cow theme. So there's a special smart contract called Milkman that allows other smart contracts like the Governor on-chain DAOs to interact with it and create orders that are then filled by the CowSwap network, right? So what this does is leverages the composability of Governor, right? Because Governor can interact with many other different things and allows you to do these on-chain MEV protected swaps, right? Because of this tool, we've made it really simple to actually create the order. It looks like a Uniswap type of interface, right? Where you're able to select your tokens that you're swapping from, and it's all no code, right? So you don't really have to know, okay, under the hood, I've got to think about this, and I got to pack my bytes like this, I got to create the data like that, right? It's very easy to use, right? And this actually helps to alleviate the issue where people have this sort of, nervousness about creating these kinds of proposals. It allows DAO administrators, large delegates, well-known delegates, lesser-known delegates, to with confidence create these proposals without being really afraid about it, right? But the most important part here, or one of the most important parts, is because these orders all execute on-chain, they remain trustless and transparent, right? Now, what happens when you create an order, when you create a swap here, is the money doesn't go to some individual, right, that manages it off-chain, right? The entire processes stay on-chain, it's very transparent, and everyone can see how it's executed, why it's executed, or if it doesn't get executed, why it didn't get executed, right? So it's very transparent in this way. So that gives you the accountability and the more decentralized nature of this. Okay, so now we're going to do a little demo video. It's quite brief because the feature is quite easy to use, and I'm going to hope that this works and talk you a little bit through it. Okay, so what we're looking at here is just a test DAO on Tally, and we go and we use the tool to create a proposal, right? And here you go through the standard steps on Tally to create a proposal. You connect your account, connect your wallet, make sure that you have enough voting power to actually propose this. If you didn't have enough voting power, you could create a draft that you could then share with someone else so that someone else with enough voting power would be able to put it on chain for you. All right, so we click continue. We have this nice little no-code interface for putting some information in here around your proposal. So you put in your title. We're going to do some test token swaps, and then a little description. And then what we're going to do now is we're actually going to choose the swap action, right? So here you get to choose your tokens that you're working on that you want to do the swap. It looks exactly like your typical swap interface that you see all over the great interwebs these days. So it's very approachable. And you see a lot of information here, right? You see the price, your execution cost, the fee. Currently, we're not taking a fee. And we have a few critical pieces in there. We have price checkers, all the sort of like complicated elements of making sure a swap happen are all included in a really easy to use no-code interface here, right? So once you create that proposal, oops, sorry, I just pressed enter there. Let me just pause it there. Once you create that proposal, it goes on chain. And now the reason why we're doing this in a video and not live is now you have to vote on it. So the proposal goes into the standard proposal lifecycle where folks now see a proposal that's live, they go to it, they vote on it, they have this nice handy little receipt down here at the bottom that tells them that, I'm not sure if you can see it super well, yeah, but the proposal is pending execution. So once the proposal goes through the whole life cycle where folks vote on it, ideally we're going to click for, we're voting for this. And we have great comment, this is great, right? We click submit. And then, right, so you go through the entire life cycle of voting. This could be a couple hours. This could be several weeks. Doesn't matter, right? And this is actually a pretty key point to note. You can create an order that may not execute for weeks, right? That's very difficult to do today, right? Because today when you swap a token, you just swap a token. You don't say, hey, I'm going to create an order in MetaMask or in Uniswap to swap in weeks from now. Because the danger here is maybe you won't get a great price. Maybe you'll say, okay, ETH is 1,500, what was it, 1,700 3 days ago, right? You say, okay, I'm going to sell it for 1,700. The proposal takes 3 days to go through the voting period. Okay, it's, success. People want to do it, but ETH is almost at 2K again, right? But now you're going to sell it at 1,700. So the DAO will actually have a loss there, right? What we are doing here with CowSwap and Milkman is actually what we're doing is there's a price checker. And that's something that, there's a default one set in here, which is the Uniswap v3 Oracle, right? Although you can create your own price checker. And the price checker actually says, hey, when it comes time to execute this order, I want it at a fair price. Using Uniswap's v3 Oracle, we can say, hey, whatever the price is then, when this proposal executes, that's the price that we want to use. Now, maybe the price goes down. That's possible. But maybe the price goes up. The fact is you're getting their actual market rate, right? So you don't have to create this situation where you have some sort of manipulation or you're not able to perceive, what the proper value is going to be in the future. And you can also set a slippage, right? So you can say, hey, maybe my order is really big, but this is the maximum amount of slippage that I want on this order, right? Now, the slippage is also really interesting because what you're doing is you set the maximum amount of slippage. And then the CowSwap network actually has solvers that compete with one another to offer better slippage. So when you say, okay, maximum slippage 10%, you actually have this network of solvers in the CowSwap network that actually try and one-up with each other with less and less slippage. So you end up getting not only a fair market price, but you also get the least amount of slippage possible based on market demand. So the flow is quite simple. Once this proposal passes, we see that you can actually see the executable code that actually is being sent to the Milkman contract on the network. You can actually simulate it and download the simulations to understand what is going to happen here. And then as we go through it, so Tommy was making the video, so he's the person who voted. So the proposal is passed. He's going to queue it. So once the proposal is queued, it is now ready to be executed by the time lock. So if you see that we see the pending execution, you can go ahead and execute it. And when the proposal is executed, what happens is this data is sent to the CowSwap network, and now the solvers start working on this order, right? And once the solvers see the order and they fill it, what we see is we update the receipt on the proposal saying it has been fulfilled, and then you can go to the DAO and you'll actually see in the treasury the list of the assets. You will now have the transaction, having the proposal, the swap completed. So that's the end of the proposal video. So yeah, a little wrap up of just about Tally if you're interested. We do a lot of things to help DAOs. The swaps are our latest feature that we've built. If you're interested in swaps for your DAO, please come up and speak with me, or you can certainly reach out. We do a large number of things for DAOs. We help folks launch their DAO, consult on tokens, create a support wide and diverse community of delegates. This is just another step in helping to enable these decentralized communities to work better. And let me get the last thing. If you want to get in touch, you can reach us at hello@tally.xyz. So that's the demo. Tally swaps.
Well, thank you so much for that, Dennis. It was a super easy to follow, and just the amount of context you already gave makes everybody easy to super understand what Tally swaps are. I want to do a few small questions here just so we can give our audience a little bit more context, but mostly about kind of zooming out and honestly understanding what made you originally start Tally.
Yeah, so Tally, as I sort of gave a little intro, is a lot about DAOs and decentralization. And my co-founder and I, we were a member of a group called Crypto NYC in 2016, 2017, which was basically the New York City-based co-working place if you were working on something in Web3 at the time. OpenSea had the office next door.
All 10 other companies.
Yeah, all 10 other companies. There was you were either working out of like the Bushwick office of Consensus, or you were at the Canal Street WeWork. And at the time, a lot of teams would come in on their sort of like ICO world tour when they hit like, the East Coast North America, and they would pitch us on really cool ideas. A lot of early DAOs came through, right? MakerDAO, Aragon. A lot of folks were pitching DAOs. And for the most part, the idea excited myself and my co-founder, Raph. But for many things, it seemed too early. It wasn't really clear what there was yet to actually govern. That changed when Compound released the Comp token during DeFi summer, when it became clear that protocols needed to be managed. So there was something that a community of users needed to manage in real time, but also that there was a lot of money at stake, right? That these protocols made money, right? So you both had something that needed levers to be pulled on smart contracts, and you needed something that managed a treasury, right? So for us, it became quite clear that if we were going to actually scale Web3 and scale many of the visions that we had for decentralization and things in Web3 in general, you were going to need real credible decentralization behind it. And to do that, you needed a lot of tooling, right? Because at the time, there wasn't very much tooling. The tooling that was out there was very opinionated. If anyone's ever looked into the maker source code, it was, back in the day, it was a real joke how it was really impossible to decipher what was happening, everything in a 3-letter acronym. There was a joke that was like the cat flips the flap and bites the, it was just a nightmare to understand how is this all working. So we realized that in order to make this work, we were going to need tools that gave greater clarity, helped people participate easier, really do all these things to make, DAOs work.
Well, I think it's been extremely beneficial to have Tally around, because now I can go just a single place and see what's going on for every of these communities. But maybe to zoom out just a little bit more, for yourself, I'm curious to hear the answer, but also it will be helpful to kind of give the audience here an answer on this too. Why are DAOs exciting, and what excites you about these DAOs?
Yeah, so we have this thesis that we're working on. I'm giving a talk at EthCC called the Hyperscale Public Infrastructure Thesis for DAOs. And I love buzzwords, so I try to pack them all into one title. And I think I did a pretty good job, but I could probably do better.
It's missing AI in there.
Yeah, the AI hyperscale, right? But really, when we think about all the things we're building, the layer 2s, Arbitrum, Optimism, Scroll, all these things that people are building. Now, when we talk about these bridges, when we talk about things like EigenLayer, what we're really talking about is the future of not just public infrastructure, but the buzzword hyperscale public infrastructure, right? If you think about layer 2s like Arbitrum, there really isn't any physical upper limit to how much value can live inside of that system, right? Today, it's many billions of dollars, but there's no reason why it can't be many trillions of dollars, right? All of these systems don't have an upper limit to how much value can be in them. And that means there's no upper limit to how many problems they can be solving, for how many people they can be solving them for, except credible neutrality for political decision-making, right? Everyone remembers what Facebook did to Zynga years ago. Zynga built an incredibly successful company on top of Facebook, and Facebook pulled the rug out from under them. You could argue that maybe something similar is happening in Reddit today, right?
It already happened for Twitter a month ago.
It already happened for Twitter a month ago, right? So if you are going to build something, if you have some idea that you think is a $1 trillion idea, which I'm sure some people in the room have, and they'll work on it this weekend at the hackathon, who are you going to build this $1 trillion idea on? Are you going to build it on top of Facebook, knowing that the moment Zuckerberg sees the value of it, he will steal it from you, essentially, rug you on that, right? Not to be too direct to Zuckerberg in the audience, But
What's the worst that could happen? A cage match fight?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I saw that too. But this is a real question. If you are going to build something that is going to be extremely valuable, where do you feel safe building it? We talked a little bit earlier in the discussion here about eigenlayer and reusing the social consensus layer on staking, right? If you build something, you want to be sure that you're building it in a place where decisions are made in a credibly neutral way, in a place, in a form where you have a voice in it. So when we talk about the future of all these L2s, of L3s, of L4s, of messaging layers, of protocols that have the ability to hold this much value, what we're really talking is, how are we going to make these places credibly neutral places to build on? And to do that, you need decentralization and you need DAOs, right? And this is what's exciting, because all of the future hyperscale infrastructure, things that may hold trillions of dollars of value, must be decentralized. They must be transparent, because otherwise people just won't build the most valuable things there because it's too inherently dangerous, right? If you build on a layer that's not decentralized, and you know that if your product becomes the most important product on that layer, the layer itself may steal it from you, you'll never build there, right? So because of that, we are super excited about DAOs, because they really underline the future of all this digital infrastructure that we're building. We don't think about it day to day, but the underlying infrastructure for the digital or electronic infrastructure today is the judicial system, right? I can take you to court. I assume I understand how courts work. But in general, we don't really trust courts so much. So actually, everyone says we only really feel confident in how Delaware courts work, right? And the entire world is just Delaware, that we really think we understand how those courts work. And when VCs say, hey, when you're incorporated, generally they like to hear Delaware. When you're doing things, generally people like to hear Delaware, right? Because they say, okay, if I build this on top of you, then at least I can sue you in Delaware, right? But there's a lot of apps that people don't build. Nobody built the new version of Zynga on Facebook, right? That idea was dead. Not because the idea is bad, not because Farmville is unfun, but because it was no longer safe, right? So DAOs bring that safety to DNS names, right? They bring that safety to bank accounts, to lending, to sequencers, to upgrades to your network, to how the smart contract code is going to be run, how we're going to handle massive hacks, how we're going to compensate people who've been wronged. All these things need credible decentralization, credible neutrality, a clear political arena for solving disagreements. All of them need DAOs. And that's why I'm really excited about it, because it really applies to everything that we're building.
I think this answer deserves a round of applause. This is amazing.
That's my talk.
I feel like anything I'm going to ask you next is not going to compare to the answer you just given, so I'm just going to stop, because I think that is a really good way of summarizing why this is important and how actually what you may not realize now can effectively be the thing that governs billions to trillions of dollars in value. And effectively, part of why we've been talking so much about why decentralization matters is because effectively people want to make sure that everybody else has the same rules applied to them too. It's super easy to notice when somebody's getting preferential treatment. And if you want things to scale, if you want things to be neutral, especially as a platform you're relying on, you want to make sure that if somebody breaks the rules, they're either held accountable or it's just not even possible. So looks like Tally is making wonderful ways in making that reality stay. It's still the case.
Trying.
And swaps help you do a lot more of that efficiently and at scales. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennison. This has been amazing.